Yeah. Had a good one.
Very good. All right.
Did you get any snow up there?
We got a couple inches. So just in the grass and stuff and cars and stuff like that, but nothing you can't get out in.
We got about an inch down here, so
All
not too
right.
bad.
Good morning. It's Erin with the Department of Medicaid. It's not quite 10 o'clock and we're still clearing out the waiting room. So we'll give it just a moment before we get started. Wayne, I did want to mention Ann is with us today, our new member. So if you want to introduce her to the TAC once we get started.
Absolutely. Ann, can you talk to me so I can see you?
I can talk. I'm waving and I'm talking.
I see you now. Now I can put a face with a name. It's a good deal.
Thank you. It's 10 o'clock, but we still have a couple people filtering in for the waiting room if you want to give it just a moment longer. I have Wayne, Brad, Johnny, Ann, and Doug logged in. Did I miss any other members? And I know Sherry is.
Cheryl said she wasn't going to be here because her mother was in the hospital. So I know she won't be joining us. Melanie probably log on anytime, I'd say.
And this is
And
Frank.
there you are, Frankie. Sorry, I didn't mean to miss you.
That's okay.
Wayne, your waiting room is clear and you do have a quorum. So we can go ahead and start and I can let you know if Melanie or anyone else, I think she's the only one we're currently missing. So if she logs in, I can let you know.
Good. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. We have the quorum established. First thing I'd like to do, though, is welcome Ann, our new member to the TAC. Ann, if you want to take just a minute to introduce yourself to the rest of the committee and all the people on the call, and just tell us a little bit about yourself and anything you want to say.
Thank you, Wayne. It's good to be here. I hope I can bring a perspective. I actually am a consumer representative of a family member who participates in a community Medicaid waiver program. My daughter is 33. She has severe autism. She lives in a residential setting on the SEL waiver. I'm a piano teacher, and it's good to be here. I hope I can help somehow.
Good, good. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes.
Okay, good. The first thing we have on the agenda today, and we have a lengthy agenda, so you know, if you have different things on the agenda, anybody that you want to speak to, you know, please have your comments ready and so forth when we get to that particular agenda item, because it's going to be a good agenda to get through. The first thing up on the agenda is a correction to the minutes itself. I noticed that the last meeting, the minutes listed as appearances, Johnny Caleb's, which he had a proxy in his place, Justin Jeter, who attended the call, and also it listed Doug Hoyt as being present for the meeting. It was actually Brad Snyder that was in attendance and not Doug. He had to miss that meeting. So we need to make a motion as a committee to amend the minutes to reflect accurately who was at the October TAC meeting, membership meeting. And that would be that Doug and Johnny be removed from appearances on the minutes and put in their place Brad Snyder and a proxy and Justin Jeter for Johnny. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make that
Oh, well.
motion if I'm allowed to, even though I wasn't there.
Yeah, you're a TAC member. You're a voting TAC member, so yes, you're allowed.
All right, I will make the motion to correct the minutes as you stated to more accurately reflect the attendance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Good. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
DMS
Aaron, that
notes
should-
those, and I will make those corrections to the court reporter and send out corrected minutes once received. Thank you.
Good deal. Good deal. Yeah, I'd emailed Erin and asked her if we could just correct them without having to do all that, but she told me we needed to go through that. So bear with us on that. Approval of meeting dates and times scheduled for 2025. Erin did send out the meeting schedule for next year. It's in line with what we have historically done in regards to meeting dates and times for the TAC. It's February the 4th, April the 1st, June the 3rd, August the 5th, October the 7th, and December the 2nd. And all meetings are at 10 a.m. Do I have a motion to go ahead and approve those meeting dates and times?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, Aaron, that's got our dates and times for 2025 approved.
Thank you. We'll get those out shortly.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is an update on the involuntary terminations. This was in relation to the survey information that the cabinet felt like they were capturing. This was related into the request back from February when Rick was the chair, and an email was forwarded to, I think, Aaron, was you the one that received that email and forwarded on to where it needed to go in the cabinet?
Yes.
Okay. Who in the cabinet wants to speak to that particular agenda item?
Wayne, I'm going to go ahead and go over that.
Okay.
Leslie Kaufman, I know most of you are probably on here. I've been around for quite some time and filling in for the director's position until it is refilled. So the update on the involuntary terminations, and that was a survey information. And this was as of yesterday. I got the information pulled. Involuntary termination information for today was a total number of involuntary terminations in the last year, and this is for all services, was 38. And the total number of involuntary terminations in the last year, residential services only, was 25. So all services 38, residential services only was 25. Total of involuntary terminations in 6 months, all services 28. Total number for involuntary in 6 months for residential services only is 21. Total voluntary termination not transitioned in the last year, all services 15, and let's see, for residential only was 12. So for a year, it's 38 and 25. For 6 months, it's 28 and 21. And not transitioned in the last year is 15 and 12.
Okay. Good. All right. Do we have any questions from committee members in relation to that information?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, this is Ann. Why are people being involuntarily terminated?
I'm going to ask Kathy, are you on? We had this conversation just a little bit yesterday.
I can talk about this if someone
Okay.
wants to.
I was going to ask if Kathy was on. It's usually where they left for reasons of maybe behavioral health reasons and or
Leslie Elizabeth's
providers
on.
club.
If she
Oh,
can
sorry,
speak to
thank
that
you.
probably. That's okay.
I was looking for Kathy because I had the conversation with Kathy yesterday.
Yeah, Elizabeth can probably assist.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
There's a variety of reasons. Many times what we have seen are folks, either behavioral, mental health needs have changed over time. Maybe an agency has supported them for 10 years or more. And just as they age and things change, that will sometimes be a reason. Also, changing physical needs may have changed over time, much like folks who are, we have aging family members that their health needs change over time. And so we may need some, a different level of care in those situations. And those are the primary reasons. In some instances, there is maybe an agency no longer has a service provider in that particular area. That's more in line with the non-residential involuntary terminations. Typically, you would see that with your behavior support services or maybe your day training services. And then in some instances, agencies have closed or want to close voluntarily. And so I know at least 4 of those in here for the last year or for a small agency that had decided to close. So there's any variety of reasons.
And we have had some residential agencies who are attempting to downsize, and that would be potentially some of those numbers as well for residential.
Who said that? I'm sorry. This is Ann. Where do these people go? What happens to them?
Well, typically they will transition to another agency, or they will remain at that agency until another service provider agrees to support them, or potentially a different level of care.
Any other questions on the
Hey.
survey numbers?
Amy has her hand raised, Wayne.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify, for those who maybe don't know, involuntary termination does not mean that an individual is losing their waiver slot. What that means is that a provider for a variety of reasons, realizes that they can no longer support that individual. What they do is they send out a notice, a 30-day notice saying, I can no longer support this individual. And they, in 30 days, we will be involuntarily terminating them for our service. But Kentucky regulation requires that until another place, if it's residential, another living situation, or if it's a different service, another service provider can be identified, that provider continues to
Right.
support the individual. So some people hear involuntary termination and think that someone's losing their waiver slot or access to services, and that's not the case. It's just the term that we have in regulation to describe that process.
So that sounds like I'm sorry, this is Ann. That sounds like a big problem for providers. If they have to care for someone they feel they can't care for. I'm probably going to have questions about this at the next meeting. I need to think about it. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for answering.
No problem.
Any other questions on the survey numbers?
Hey, Wayne, I just wanted to remind you as the TAC chair that Rick initially asked for those survey numbers to guide the TAC's work in addressing the involuntary termination issue to move forward so that the TAC can inform its work and recommend a course of action to solve that problem. We did take the TAC heard testimony from other states back in, oh gosh, I don't remember, last year. At some point, Aaron might remember. And so maybe it might be
I
appropriate.
think it was early 2023.
Yeah, maybe it might be appropriate
2022 one.
for the TAC members to go back and review. I don't know if we were recording those meetings at that point, but maybe the transcripts or if there was a presentation, and have members come up with a proposal.
Yeah, I think that's something we're gonna have to do separate of this meeting with this agenda that's in front of us.
Sorry, yeah, I just meant for the next meeting.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other comments on the termination numbers that were given to us?
This is Ann. I just want to say thank you, Amy, because this is a problem for providers, and it's also a big problem for people with IDD who are obviously not getting the care they need if providers can't care for them. So this needs to be addressed. I think it's very important. We got people obviously suffering.
Wayne, this is Erin. If you can put that in writing to me as the TAC sees fit, we can work on trying to gather that information up together and get to you before the next meeting to be reviewed. And may I also reflect that Melanie has joined us for the record.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Welcome, Melanie.
Hello, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't find the Zoom link, so I had to go back to the cabinet link website. So thank you.
Good deal. We are on the agenda item of discussion of Medicaid Beneficiary Advisory Council, the BAC. This is a new requirement for DMS that has to be in place next year. Somebody from the cabinet going to speak to that?
Wayne, this is Leslie. I just grabbed a PowerPoint that Veronica Judy Cecil did with, I believe it was the MAC the other day. And so the Medicaid Beneficiary Advisory Council, BAC, is a new requirement, like you said, for next year, and it's part of the Access and Federal Final Rules. I'm just going to go over just some of the highlights in this presentation, and then Aaron's going to send it out to you as soon as this meeting's over, if that's okay. It's really short because we're just getting started, right? So the Medicaid Advisory Committee and Beneficiary Advisory Council, of course, has a CFR that it's governed by. And under the Medicaid Access Rule, the new federal requirements are the new federal requirements for the Medicaid Advisory Committee, MAC, and the Beneficiary Advisory Council, BAC, and they're calling that the BAC. Some of the key areas to focus on. Of course, it brings consistency across all Medicaid programs in how external partners, including individuals with lived experience, provide ideas and suggestions on policy development and effective administration of the program. Some of the key focus areas for that are coordination, eligibility and enrollment, renewal processes, quality of services, additional modifications that might need to happen to the benefits, beneficiary and provider communication by the state and the managed care organizations or the MCOs, health disparities, health equity, and cultural competencies. And I believe we've got a contractor working on this as well, so that they should be reaching out fairly soon. In collaboration with the external partners, states do have some flexibility in the composition within the federal requirements per the regulations. State Medicaid director is responsible, so that would be Lisa. Commissioner Lee for the selection of the members for the MAC and BAC. State agencies are also responsible for the development of the governance documents and planning and facilitation of the meeting. So kind of, Aaron, you're going to be it again, I believe. So, some of the things that they are requiring, there's really a very difference in what would be required of the MAC and what would be required of the BAC related to composition, the term of how long you can serve. You cannot have you can't have like consecutive terms like we do in the MAC. You have to meet at least every quarter, and the BAC meetings do not need to be public. But the BAC must meet prior to the MAC meeting every month. And then there's lots of things related to the responsibilities. One of the things I'm just going to go over really quick, and again, I'm going to have Aaron to send this out to you. We've already got a roadmap started as to what this would look like. Just to start out with an overview of the MAC and the BAC implementation process for Kentucky. And again, it's not till next year. There will be a gap analysis. We will use best practices. We will do recruitments and develop bylaws, community and partner engagement. There will be a state plan amendment to occur in 2025. And of course, we always want to be transparent. We will publish all those documents and memberships on the website sometime around July of 2025. And then we're hoping to have the MAC and the BAC according to the new rules established by July the 9th of 2025. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what she gave on the MAC, and I think this might have been brought up at the Consumer Rights Technical Advisory Committee as well, but Aaron will send that out to you. So definitely more to come on this. We're, as you all are probably aware or heard us talk about this, there are, I think, 20 some new federal rules. We've kind of combined those into like 9 categories. We do have a vendor working on that, a contractor as well. And then I think around 4 will be affecting the HCBS waivers. So, and other community programs. And that's it for right now, but definitely more to come on that. And we can even come back if you wanted us to, Wayne, like when we get a little bit deeper into this, maybe come back and do like an official presentation.
Good, good. Johnny, that was your agenda item. Is that a pretty good summary for now, or were you looking for more?
Yeah, sure. I just kind of wanted to, introduce that subject to the TAC so that we can be working alongside Medicaid as it develops. And I know there's a timeline and lots of other rules for implementation as well. So anyway, yeah, thanks, Leslie. Appreciate that.
No problem.
This is
Anybody else
Melanie.
have?
I'm sorry.
Sure, Melanie. Go ahead.
This is Melanie. I have a question. As far as the, because one of the things that seemed very optimistic is there was a desire to have input from caregivers on these 2 groups. And so I looked that I'm excited about that. Will there be opportunities for groups that don't kind of fall into the kind of formal agencies that are represented, like if there was a support group or advocacy group within the state, would they also be considered as potential members?
I think so, Melanie. The composition that I've got on my list here says current and former Medicaid beneficiaries, family members, caregivers, existing beneficiary advisory groups. The size will be determined by Medicaid, but it sounds like to me that if you're willing, let us know that you're willing to be on the committee or participate.
Okay, thank you. I'm very interested, but I know that there probably will be a lot of interest from several groups. So, but thank you for that.
Yes, looks like it's very open to
Okay.
to Kentucky's needs as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Leslie on the BAC? Thank you, Leslie. Next item up for discussion is the rate study implementation update.
So I can talk to that a little bit, Wayne, sorry. I think most of this has fallen to me this morning. So as you're aware, we did post on our website the rate study. We have an anticipated approval date with CMS in January. They are still reviewing. We are still working with CMS, going through requests for information from them. So nothing's finalized yet. And of course, systems changes are a big deal, and working on the change orders that allow for the systems to occur and the pass through of dollars to make the systems changes happen. So that's currently, Alicia might be on, but that's what we're doing right now. There's a lot of work there.
Hey, Leslie, can I ask a clarifying question about that?
Yes, ma'am.
And this may be a little niche, so if you don't know, that's totally okay. Related to the rate study and the waivers, and this may have been outlined in the May waiver changes, when those changes were approved after Appendix K and became effective in May. There was discussion about splitting the billing code for home community-based PDS, the case management portion and the FMA portion, because it was bundled. And it was announced that it was going to be split. That has not occurred yet. And my inclination is that it will not occur until the rate study is formal, because technically the rate study creates that split rate. But I was just wondering if you had any update about that.
You're correct. We've got to get through these approvals first. And that's also, if anybody's going to ask today as well, that's also part of a larger conversation we're having with CMS related to PDS in general. So until we get the approvals, we couldn't move forward. Of course, we couldn't move forward with anything yet.
Okay, thank you. I've gotten a couple questions about it, and I just did not want to assume.
Any other questions on that particular agenda item? Okay, the next item is clarification regarding governing standards and waivers. I guess that falls to you too, Leslie.
Yeah, I did put a question mark on this because I wasn't sure exactly what we were talking about. If it has to do with like regulations, we're working on those now. If it has to do with waiver applications, we're trying to get the regulations and the applications consistent. As you're aware, we've had changes through the years that we've had to focus on certain things. Like this time, we were really focusing on getting those rates in and getting those rates approved and not having a lot of requests for information from CMS. So there will be more amendments to come. And we do know that if that's where that was coming from.
I can clarify, Leslie.
Okay, go ahead, Amy.
This came up in June during the TAC meeting. May or June. I may be getting my months wrong of when the TAC meeting actually occurred. We had this discussion when your predecessor was still here. The question became, because we have a lot of documents out there. We have waiver applications that are approved, right? We have the waivers themselves that are approved that have a set of standards in them that are not articulated in regulation. And providers are becoming increasingly confused about when the waivers themselves and the regulations are in conflict, which set of standards are required. And the previous answer was when the waiver application requires more than the regulation requires, right? When it requires something more severe or something additional, you go with the harsher standard, right? But there was supposed to be something put out in writing about this, and it's never been issued. And providers obviously when it comes to maybe not following the regulation and following something else, they get a little nervous. And we just wondered if maybe we could have something in writing kind of articulating what standard gets followed when.
Yeah,
Does that make
so I made a note because I had this discussion yesterday. So, and I've been on the provider side too. I worked at a community mental health center for 8 years. And I think this might have come up with CAP, talking about wanting something in writing. I will tell you that we probably won't doing right now because we're in the midst of so many changes. And I feel like we would have like letter A, B, C, and D, and that I think that would be very confusing for everybody. I did talk to Jonathan about this, Jonathan Scott, yesterday. There is some language in the regulation about general federal approvals. I understand that you are worried about consistency. So there's probably not going to be anything out like, till after January. So don't hold me to anything till sometime next year, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. And again, my only concern is, and there are some really specific things, like really specifically, one of the most major changes has to do with family home providers and some of the training requirements and other standards, et cetera, that are not articulated in regulation. And, if a provider, hasn't been tuned in to the TAC meetings, they have no idea that there are changes in addition to what is in the regulation. And I fear that there are a ton of providers out there that are just looking at the regulation and think they're doing the right thing and aren't doing the right thing because they don't know.
I got you, Amy. I understand because I've been there. So I'm going to have Jonathan to grab that language, and we'll get Aaron, we're going to get that out to them after this meeting that we currently have in the regulations that talk about CMS approvals. But until then, Amy, give me just a little bit of time. You probably are aware, we need to make more amendments after we get this approved. We just didn't want to get what we had at CMS clouded, that they couldn't just hurry up and get the rates approved. That was a very important piece to this. So we do have additional amendments that will be coming out going forward. So just give me a little bit of time on that one, okay? But I will grab that language for you too, just so that you have it. And I do understand, and I know reviewers change, and I know people in my position change. I've left before and come back. So I understand that. So, and we've already been in conversations with DBH as well and Dale, and we can continue those conversations to be as consistent as we possibly can.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Any other question on the clarification regarding governing standards and waivers? Okay, the next item up for discussion is the rough 2025 timeline regarding rates and regulations.
So the best I can do right now, because we're waiting for CMS. We've only had one round of requests for information, and we sent those back around the 25th, I believe, of November. Have not heard back from those. So if that's all that they had and they approve what we put in the request for information, that'll keep us moving. We are still very hopeful, and CMS has given us no reason to believe that the waivers wouldn't be approved in January. So we got to get the waiver approvals. We have the rates that CMS is also looking at as well, and then the regulations. We have already drafted very rough draft regulations so that when we continue to work with CMS, we can speed up that process, and working with the Secretary's office as to whether how those will be implemented as an EREG or an OREG, and what else that we could do to speed those up.
And then I accidentally left this off when this was my agenda item, but I know that Leslie, I don't know if it was you, but I know someone with the cabinet presented pretty recently to the legislature on just an update on the children's waiver work. Could you just run through that quickly if you don't mind?
I can. Hang on just a second. I actually have that pulled up. It's on my I have a presentation today. I told Wayne that I might not be able to stay on the whole time. We have another interim joint committee meeting today. Let me see if I can just pull this up for you real quick.
I think that's at 1.
Yes. Just a second. Can I share my screen real quick, Aaron?
You should be able to share now.
Okay, I'm getting it. Let's see. Screen 2. Did I get the right one? Can you see that? Can you see children's specific waiver?
We can see it, Leslie.
It's not lit up for me like it usually is. Okay, that's weird. So this is the child specific waiver. If you all remember, I guess this has been last year sometime. Guidehouse had worked on doing feasibility study, and they worked on doing some town hall meetings, and probably a lot of you all participated in those. It has become something a little bit larger that we're working on. And this has now taking on a very important interest to the secretary's office. So we're working on maybe something that looks bigger. In the budget, by the way, they did not give us funding until state fiscal year 26. So we're not behind or anything. And this is a much larger group. Myers and Stauffer contractor is now working on this as well, and they have all the information from the stakeholder meetings, the town halls, and the feasibility study that was done last year as well. So again, we didn't get money until 2026. We're going to conduct a comprehensive system assessment, conduct service mapping, gather documents and collect data, identify stakeholders and build a registry and develop a communication plan. And there is an upcoming advisory work group that you all will hear about, and I can bring this back to you all as well in January of 2025. So this waiver may be a waiver, and it might be a state plan amendment. We haven't gotten that far yet. It might be a 1915I, depending on everything that we want to include, all inclusive into one program. So it's exciting, but we do have support. These are huge meetings that we've been having internally so far. Dale sits in there, DCBS sits in there, Department of Juvenile Justice sits on these meetings. Of course, Medicaid, our partners at DBH, we're all working on this in collaboration. And that's the only slide I have to share yet. Again, remember, it doesn't start until state fiscal year 2026.
Leslie, Frankie has his hand raised.
I see a hand. Go ahead.
Frankie. Go ahead, Frankie.
I just have a quick question regarding the town halls. Possibly two questions depending on the answer. When you say town halls, is that what they did with Navigate and the waiver redesign?
Yes, the what I call them town halls, but there were stakeholder meetings in the public held last year, I believe, with folks that used to be at Navigant, but then were also moved to Guidehouse. So Guidehouse would have been the ones that facilitated those meetings, and they came up with kind of collapsed everything together from those meetings on the wants and desires of the folks. And that'll all be brought out. I've given that all to Myers and Stauffer now, and they will be utilizing that information when they start the stakeholder advisory meeting in 2025. So that, again, that's more to come. It's just not happening publicly yet. We've been meeting for several months trying to get a grasp on what we want to accomplish, which is a much bigger picture. I think you all will probably be impressed with what we're trying to do with that waiver or state plan amendment. Is that the right answer for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you don't mind, I have two questions about that, because I didn't know that was going on last year.
Mm-hmm.
When is the next meeting that's open to the public from the town halls?
So we'll start in January. It's just a couple of weeks away in 2025 with stakeholder meetings again. I just wanted you all to know that what you did or that you participated in, if you did participate last year, is not lost. I have all that information and I have shared it with Myers and Stauffer so they have it in hand. So I just want you to know that what you did work on, it was not a lost effort or time. So January is your answer. We'll start January.
Okay, and then the last question I had, I'm so sorry, is
Fine.
when it was an advocate a few years ago, I was on a board with Pam and I believe it was Alicia Clark. Do you know if they're gonna do those boards again as well?
The advisory committee that they will develop in 2025, I'm not sure about having a board. They'll probably have a core team. I'm just guessing that's pretty much what we do now. We have stakeholder groups and then we have like core team meetings and then we'll have like an advisory that all that will roll up to. So I'm just guessing.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And Crystal's offering information. Thank you, Crystal. Access rule requirements for grievance process and procedures, and we're working in regards to, oh, sorry. She's giving me information.
That's just some additional information for something else.
Sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry. You just sent that to me directly. I was thinking it was the group. I apologize. So I think I answered your question and I can bring it back to this meeting when we get started with those advisory work groups, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions in regards to that agenda item? Okay, the next item up for discussion is an update regarding the waiting list for the waiver programs.
Let's see. I'm just going to read what information I have here, which might be more than what you're asking for. We've got 13,409 total number of people on one or more waiting lists. So we're trying to address the fact that folks are on multiple waivers when we're thinking about numbers, or multiple waiting lists of thinking about numbers. 38.6%, 5,172 have a current allocation for a waiver. Let me see, HCBS, the waiting list is 2,449. Let's see, and there's about 270, 269 of those are on one or more list. Let me see here. Michelle P is 9,281. And 1,296 of those are on other waiting lists as well. And so when we think about the numbers, they are extravagant and they're large, right? And I understand that, but we do have many people that are duplicated because they're on multiple waiting lists. So we've been trying to get a grasp on exactly how many are. SCL is 3,525. And 1,053 of those are on other waiting list. I think that's it. And that's all the waiting lists we have right now. SCL, Michelle P, and HCB.
Are any of the SCL waiting list people, are they in the emergency category or?
Let me see. I don't believe so because we were able to allocate, thank you. We were able to allocate the 2025 slots that were allocated by the General Assembly, and I think we've been utilizing that. And I think they may, Crystal?
We've been allocating from the urgent
Thank
waiting
you.
list as well.
Thank you. That's what I
So
thought.
we currently have some folks still listed as on the waiting list, but these are people that are working to get the documentation, updated records and things submitted for allocation, and are in the process of being allocated. So those are largely our future planning folks only.
Crystal, just to clarify, we do still have reserved emergency slots though, if there is
Yes.
an emergency. Okay.
Yes. The additional slots that were received over and above that amount is what was utilized to pull folks from our urgent list.
I see Frankie's got his hand up again. Frankie?
Oh, I I do have one question regarding SCL. Oh, we might be talking about that at a later time. I'm not sure, but I've been getting calls, people asking me about the SCL. It used to be when I got on it a few years ago, it was based on your, they would assess you to see what your IQ was, and it used to be based on that. People keep asking me if it's still based on your IQ when you first get on it, or if it's based on the disability now.
So there's a few different steps. And the first step is to determine if you meet that target population for eligibility. And that's where we're looking at that IQ and adaptive scores and the diagnosis initially that you're talking about. And then once that person receives the allocation, they go through a level of care review process where they look at that same information, but also some additional information to determine that that person meets ICF level of care in order to get services. But those are the two criteria we look at. Now, as far as determining if they meet emergency criteria, that's where you're looking at the person's current living situation, support needs, et cetera. But that's a separate step than just eligibility. For the eligibility piece, it's still based on that IQ and adaptive assessment and the diagnosis that you thought. That's not changed.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Johnny,
You're
you got
welcome.
your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. I just wanted to point out that, even with the additional funding for waiver slots, the waiting list still keeps climbing. And I know that the slots have been allocated and people are, accessing services. And I also understand that, a person may be on more than one wait list. But even still, even just in the past few weeks, the total number of people on wait lists has climbed to, 175 people almost. So, and I'm not criticizing anyone on this call. It's just a matter of, funding and provider capacity and a number of factors. I just wanted to point out that, despite all the efforts and the additional funding, people are still desperate for services, and the waiting list keeps climbing. So, and I did want to ask one thing, maybe for Leslie or Crystal. All of the recent allocations, waiver funding allocations that were made, have those people been able to access services, or is there anyone waiting and still trying to find services, even though they have waiver funding and can't find the services they need? Or does anyone have that information?
As far as the individuals who've been allocated, we would have to look at the data to see the status of all of those individuals and where they are in the process from the time of allocation to that. I could not say right off that every single one of those or how many exact numbers that were allocated. They have been allocated. But we would have to specifically pull for that group. We know we do have individuals who have been allocated who have not yet accessed services, but as far as that particular group of people, we would have to look at that data to be able to say for sure where they are.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Frankie?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I wanted to ask one more question regarding the waiver clause. I know years ago, I think it was before Commissioner Lee, it was Commissioner Anderson. she had talked about, but right before they contracted with Navigant, like instead of doing Michelle P and SCO and HCB, to do like a super waiver where it's based on everybody's needs. Are they still thinking about doing that?
Currently, right now, what we have been approved for is that children's waiver. So we do have the funds to work on that, which may help with some of the, slots that, or folks that are on the waiting list, children wise. I was just going to mention too that, we did get, you all are aware of this, we got 650 slots, I believe, for state fiscal year 25. I know this is a drop in a bucket when you look at the total numbers. I understand that. But we did get 1,275 for state fiscal year 26. So we're asking for CMS's approval to release those ASAP now. We've already turned that into CMS. So there's, can I share my screen real quick again? Thank you, Aaron. I'll just show this to you real quick. I'm sorry, I'm rushing. I'm gonna have to take off just here in a minute and Alicia will take over. Okay, can you see my screen there? You see my screen okay? So you'll see new slots in state fiscal year 2025 and then new slots in state fiscal year 2026. So these are the ones that the General Assembly allotted us to include. Of course, we have to get CMS approval. Just because the legislators say that we can add slots doesn't mean that CMS will allow us always, especially if you were in a situation where you're, might be out of compliance or something, but that's not our situation. So we've already asked CMS if we can allot these slots for 26. Tried to get ahead of it just a tad.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I know it's just dropping a bucket, guys. I understand that. Is there any other questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Hoffman, this is Melanie. Do those numbers also include, I know that the kids that are in out of home care or foster adoption, that there's a kind of a separate pot, if you will, of waiver allocations. To the numbers that you've shared today, do they represent that group as well?
Crystal,
yes,
yes, you did. Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also money follows the person slots.
Yeah.
Served
Yes.
and embedded.
Yes, it includes all of those.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, the next, go
This
ahead.
is Ann. Ann, I have
Go
a
ahead.
question. I wondered, Crystal, will you be getting that information Johnny was asking for and report back next time?
I will work with Medicaid on the data, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, the next agenda item is ombudsman for adults with IDD living in community homes. I think this is one from Melanie. Melanie, you want to clarify what you're asking specifically there?
Right. It was, this information was shared with me that there's no specific ombuds person that somebody could reach out to for individual adults living in community homes. And I just wanted to find out if there's an office that we need to be getting in contact with or a specific person.
So I put two items in the chat. One is
They only
protection
came to
advocacy.
me.
Oh, I'm
They
sorry.
only came to me. It's okay.
On.
It defaulted to the last
Crystal's
thing. So
fault. Sorry.
yes, it's all my fault.
Hang on. I'm getting it. Just do it again. I'm so sorry. So you have P&A and there's an intake line. And I've worked with P&A over the years, hundreds of times with folks with disabilities. And let me grab this. And then Ombudsman's office is not specific to this population. However, they do cover this population. And if you all have ever met Sherry Culp, she is a wonderful person and very passionate about what she does. So I put P&A in the chat as well as the ombudsman, Sherry Culp. And she's the long-term care ombudsman.
And I did also just want to add that by regulation, all providers are required to have a complaint and dispute process. That process is DDID make sure that they have it, every year during those reviews, and that information is distributed to the individuals every provider supports. So providers will also have that own process and information available too. And if you have a loved one that is being served, you can request that information.
This is Ann. Can I speak?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all's comments, and I have to tell you that everything you just said is ineffective. So you get bounced around, and this question actually came from me. It's a problem. So the long-term care ombudsman will not represent my daughter. She bounces me off back to CHFS listens. And when I go to CHFS listens, I get bounced back to the long-term care ombudsman, who tells me she doesn't represent people living, only nursing homes, not people in long-term care like community homes on a waiver. So people on P&A, if you cannot communicate, they won't represent you also. Plus they're so overworked, but they only do self-advocate. So neither of those are effective. And what was the third thing? What did you call it, Amy? Every provider has a complaint system. That's also ineffective. So they need to have and deserve to have an ombudsman just for them, since the long-term care is not doing it. And how do we make that happen?
Well, I don't think we can create new offices in government.
So do we need to go to the legislature for that?
Well, that's not what this committee's for.
No, I'm asking y'all for your opinion, because they need an ombudsman. People with IDD who cannot communicate need an ombudsman also. So I don't know, who do you think we should approach about that?
I think you may have some issues that's specific to your daughter that you may need to take up with people that work with the cabinet. If you're having issues in regards to different grievances or complaints that you may have or that your daughter may have, to say that there's not representation for people. I mean, I don't know that this committee can agree with that. I mean, every provider in the waiver program is required to have a grievance and appeals process. And there's other means beyond those grievance and appeals process that people can access. That's the direction I would point you in.
Well, it's not just me. So I've just used myself for an example, because I shouldn't be talking about other people. But there's people on the Medicaid waiver who need an ombudsman and don't have access to one. So that seems like an issue for this committee to me, that because this is a need of people with IDD. So I guess
I think Leslie shared the information in regards to the long-term care ombudsman. I mean,
yes, and I can repeat what I said, but those things she shared are not. We do have a grievance.
And this is Erin with Medicaid. If you would like to
Thank you.
email me some of those issues, I can ask around and see who can possibly address some of those for you.
Thank you,
See
Aaron. I
what we can
appreciate
find.
it
Yes,
because,
ma'am.
and we need to move on. And I think the next agenda item is going to be related also. But I guess,
Are these your items, Ann? Because
yes,
I got
yes,
these
they
from
are.
Melanie.
Yes, they came from Melanie.
But in the future, you know, if you want to present items, then you need to present those directly to me as the chair so that I know
Yes, sir.
who
Yes,
to
sir, I
address in the
will.
meeting for those particular items.
I certainly will. Thank you.
Go ahead. If this is your item, go ahead.
Well, it speaks for itself. There's no legal representation either for people with IDD and community homes.
Frankie, did you have a question about the previous? I'm sorry, I just saw your hand was raised.
That's okay. I I I I, I apologize. I'm not very good with names. I just had a real quick comment on what she was saying. Um, is 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 there a way I can get her contact information to find out a little bit more of what she's talking about?
I would love to speak with you, Frank.
Okay.
I can share your all's contact information with each other after the meeting if you'd like. As
Thank you
long as
so much.
it's not TAC related business, you can
Thank
speak
you.
independently. Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Wayne, since I'm gonna have to go here in just a minute, can I run through the next couple of items if that's okay? And then I'll leave the last one or two just for Alicia. Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead.
So I know folks have been, worried about the election and what changes might come and what does that mean for Kentucky and what does it mean federally and what does it mean for waivers and CMS and nationally and things like that. So I have been through changes like this before. Usually it doesn't mean a yes or no, it's just a delay. And I'm just going to be honest with you. It's not that they're going to say no to anything that we're working on federally. It's not that they're going to say yes. It's just that they have to understand it. So usually sometime around, the 20th of January or inauguration, the CMS usually gets an email that says halt a lot of the approvals until the new team has time to take a look at it and make decisions. Again, it's not that they're going to say no. So I know that's probably worrisome for folks, but we don't have any information now other than our previous history. Nobody has said anything about any changes for states. We just know that in the past it has delayed time. We've been in contact with several CMS groups, whether it be the 1915C, the 1915I, the 1115 waivers, all those things that we're working on, and they are working desperately to get things done over the holidays. So that's kind of where we are. Nothing other than us discussing it and starting to kind of gather some information too about what we have pending at CMS. Commissioner Lee has started to gather all the state plan amendments we have pending, the 1115s, the waivers that we've got pending with CMS, and gathering that all into one document. Aaron, I think you were part of that. She had state plan amendments. I think she's got waivers, multiple types of waivers, and just the information, anything we might have pending at CMS. So I just wanted to let you all know that. Don't have any more information than that right now. I'm just going to keep moving in, then we can go back. Current status of the PDS cap from CMS is still unofficial. We are still working with them and we are meeting with them on a regular basis. So I will have more to come on that fairly soon, just not today. I don't expect to get anything formally in 2024 for sure. because we're working with them. The status of the 6 waiver applications and updates and anticipated timelines. I kind of talked about that earlier. We are currently right now answering questions, requests for information back to CMS. Our last submission was all 6 waiver questions went back to CMS on 11/25, which was pretty good feat to get all that done in one night. We anticipate the rates will be approved effective January 1 of 2025. We do have some things that we have to watch over. If you all have heard us talk about the ARPA funds, we have to make sure on some changes and modifications in the future. We have to ensure that all ARPA funds are exhausted before we can make some changes. So we're expecting those ARPA funds to be exhausted at the end of this year or the first quarter of next year. And whether they're exhausted by the first quarter of next year or not, CMS will only allow us to go into March. That's it. That's how long that you can access those additional ARPA funds. The projected timelines for regulations, I've already talked to you all about that. We are working as hard as we can, working on the regulations now and working with the Secretary's office to what that'll look like in the future. And that's for all 6 waivers. And then this was previous, the ICF IID information. I've got how many individuals in Kentucky's ICFs, how many have been in the last 15 years, 20 years, and 40 plus years. I've got member count is 194, 15 years and less. 47 are greater than 15 years, and 128 are greater than 20, and 82 of that total count have been there for greater than 40 or greater. And I think that's all the information that I had to give you today. So is there anything else I can help with real quick?
Any other questions for Leslie? Johnny, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Leslie, do you know if the people who live in ICFs and or are kind of stuck in limbo at a state psychiatric hospital, do those people have access to slots if they want to leave
Answer
and
that.
come out?
Sure. So those
Thank you.
individuals meet emergency criteria for SCL allocations. They fall under that that category. Generally, as far as our state ICFs, it's a little bit different with the private ICF folks who aren't necessarily kind of there under the 202B least restrictive option. But when they're identified as being ready to transition, they have a transition process at the ICF where they work to identify providers. Staff from DDID attends all of their monthly meetings and is involved with that process to transition. And then when they feel they've kind of gotten to a point where they're close to discharge, then they just send us the emergency request and the allocation. Hospital, it's a little bit of a faster moving process ideally because it's in an acute setting, but it's the same type of situation. If they identify somebody who needs it, they will submit the application or work with the CMHC to get that application in. And then when they feel they're ready to pull that trigger to actually get the allocation that they feel like they're close to being able to have some things lined up, then they'll let us know and we process that allocation. But they do meet that emergency criteria and have access to those slots.
Okay, and one follow-up, if I may, the people who are ready to transition out or want to, I've heard reports that the person and their team or guardian would like the person to leave, but they just cannot find a provider willing or able to provide the needed support for that person. So in effect, they are stuck in a an institutional setting for lack of provider. The funding is there, the desire to leave is there, and they just cannot get a, provider who is able or willing, to say yes to trying to support them. So I would just, can you comment on that, or how prevalent is that problem? Is there anything that, can be done to assist
Yeah, I mean,
providers to?
yeah, there's a multiple levels of things that are impacting that, staffing issues, just higher acuity individuals. So we're looking at it from a variety of different angles of what's needed. But what we're doing on the individual level is, like I said, our staff is involved both with our hospitals and our ICF facilities. We meet regularly with those teams to work through the individual cases. And so when we come across individuals that the traditional just referral process isn't working for, we just try to attack that individually and look at what those barriers are, and do whatever we can to put things in place to get them to that point to where they can be allocated. It moves slower, I think, at times than it used to, but I would say most people aren't necessarily stuck. It's just not as quick as we would like it in the past. That ultimately most folks, we are able to identify providers and put things in place that they're able to transition out, and we just continue to work with the individuals that are not seeing that progress regularly and continuously until we can get them there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? While we still got Crystal with us, Leslie had to go ahead and leave for her 1 o'clock meeting, and we certainly appreciate all the information she shared during the meeting.
Wayne, I had a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Crystal, you may not know this because I don't know if you put that data together. That data is only state ICFs, or is it the privates too?
My assumption is that it's including the two private ICF data, because they all do bill Medicaid, and so that's where the information come from.
Okay.
I don't believe it's just specific to ours, which is why I was kind of putting that caveat in there, because
Yeah.
they don't necessarily have the same stringent requirements for least restrictive that we do.
Sure. And then my comment would be, and this situation predates me, so I may be misspeaking about it. Wayne can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but back in the day, there was the tiered transition rate for individuals coming out of institutional settings into the community setting, and it was, available for a certain period of time for a provider who, was accepting and could transition individuals into the community-based setting. It may be worth, exploring the possibility of that if we're having, obviously you can't make this decision today, but just to put a pin in it, it may be worth exploring that system again to see if that can help get individuals transitioned, out of the institutional settings.
Yeah, Amy,
That's certainly been brought to us, and that's one of the items on the list of things to consider. We do have that we didn't have previously for a few years. We do now have money follows person, the 10 slots for that, which is just a recent comeback. That's not exactly, I think, what you're referring to, but that is one of the things that existed in the past that had gone away for a while. So.
Yeah, I think some of the funding that Amy was referring to was when they had the big push to get a lot of folks out of Oakwood and into the community and place them all around the state and so forth. So I remember exactly what she was talking about. So any other questions for Crystal? Okay. Do we have any other questions in regards to closing discussion?
Wayne, this is Myra. I do have one question for Crystal.
Sure.
It's an overall question for someone that's trying to get the SEL emergency. If we cannot find documentation from a school where someone was in special ed prior to the age of 18 or 21, is there another option for trying to get that information? Because some folks we have, of course, they were in school even before we had the American Disabilities Act and things like that. So
Yeah,
any
if you can
direction.
just email me about those, because there can be a variety of different options, kind of depending on the individual case of what might be available. But if you want to drop me an email, we can kind of have a discussion about that, and I can identify some of the different things that we can use, like social security records and some things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or anything else anybody wants to talk about during this meeting before we call an adjournment? Okay, before we adjourn, I do want to thank Crystal. I want to thank all the cabinet representatives that spoke today. I know Leslie had to leave for a meeting and everything, but oh, I see a hand up by Frankie. Frankie, you got a question?
Yeah. Sorry, I just had a quick question. I'd say it's hard to get a hold of her because she has a lot to do. But last year sometime, I had sent an email to Commissioner Lee about something, but I haven't heard anything. Does anybody know of another email I can send it to, and it would most likely get to her, if that makes sense?
Frankie, this is Erin. You can send that email to me and I can pass it along to everyone who needs to help address it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up. Do you, Aaron?
I do not.
Okay, well, thank you for all your help, Aaron, and Merry Christmas to everybody. Hopefully everybody has a nice holiday period, and we'll see everybody back at the next TAC meeting in February. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.